Hello guys and welcome back. Today this video is going to be something different. Now I first have to say I'll be breaking down an article written by Borderlands community member / Twitch streamer MITSU. If you're a fan of Morning Afterkill or Gothalion, you have definitely heard his name. He did an awesome job with this article and put a lot of what the Borderlands community is feeling into words. So check him out. His Twitter, Twitch, and the article will all be linked in the description down below. So with that, let's get right into it. So first we gotta talk about the history of Gearbox. We're talking about Gearbox Software, the development team behind the Borderlands franchise, Duke Nukem, Aliens Colonial Marines, and more recently Battleborn and Project 1v1. Back in 1998, the original Half-Life was released, which was truly groundbreaking at the time and changed how the world looked at first-person shooters. Valve, the company behind Half-Life, and now Steam, wanted to create expansion packs for the game. So they contracted the work to the original 5 members of Gearbox Software, the most prominent member of which being current CEO and president of the company, Randy Pitchford. His one-of-a-kind personality, magic tricks, solidified him as the man we know today. Next was Landon Montgomery. He ran the day-to-day operations at Gearbox for 11 years and worked with the companies to branch out to find new business and new games to work on. And he fostered a nearly 0% turnover rate among employees in the first 5 years of business, which is unheard of in almost any business. Next is Rob Hieronymus, who worked heavily on the writing of the Half-Life expansions Blue Shift in 2001 and Opposing Force in 1999. Next there is Stephen Ball. He was the Chief Financial Officer or CFO and artist at Gearbox Software and has been there since its inception. Finally is Brian Martell, who is known mostly for his artwork. Gearbox continued their work for other companies. One of their most important works was the Xbox to PC port of Halo Combat Evolved in the early 2000s. But as with most game developers, they got into the industry to make their own games, so that's what they did. Gearbox's first jump into the game market was Brothers in Arms, which was very well received and spawned an onslaught of sequels and continuations of the series. But in 2007, they found their purpose and the game that would make them rival all other major AAA developers, Borderlands. The game was set to be a gritty, realistic first-person shooter with looting elements. For better or for worse, for the final stages of development, Borderlands had an 11th hour style change. The realistic shooter was changed to the cel-shaded graphic style that gives the game an almost cartoony look, and how everyone knows about it today and kind of what won over a lot of fans, which then gave them an edge and difference among the horde of real first-person shooters such as Call of Duties, Battlefields, and Fallouts. The game was a huge success and created the looter-shooter genre. But Borderlands was not without its problems. But Gearbox found ways to address the community problems on their own terms, even going as far as writing a letter from the character Claptrap explaining what would be fixed and changed in Borderlands 2. 3 years after the release of Borderlands 1, in 2012, Borderlands 2 would be released to huge critical acclaim and would launch many content creators' careers, which led to 4 successful expansion packs, climaxing at the Tiny Tina and the Assault on Dragon's Keep. At the time, it was great to be a Borderlands fan, but obviously, everything didn't stay great. Gearbox then went on to release the Headhunter packs, which were smaller pieces of content, mostly holiday themed, to add some extra longevity and keep people playing the game. But then Gearbox stopped listening to what the community wanted, and the players were constantly trolled with fake raid bosses and vague talks about the future of the game and the series. Amongst this, Gearbox started to expand their catalog of games with a series of controversies, such as the Saga lawsuit against Gearbox for their work on Aliens Colonial Marines, and more recently with the remaster of Bulletstorm and the controversy regarding G2A. Then fans got a surprise announcement of Borderlands the pre-sequel, which was good and bad news. Fans were happy about a new Borderlands game, but it wasn't being developed by Gearbox. It was instead being outsourced to 2K Australia. Content creators were shown the game early, and the game obviously was hyped up to extreme levels. When the release hit in 2014, 2 years after the release of Borderlands 2, fans were less than impressed. The game still has an amazing story and one worth playing for all Borderlands fans, but because 2K Australia was shut down after the game, fans feel as though they were cheated on the season pass they were promised, especially when they paid $30 for the season pass and $60 for the initial game at launch, which in typical Gearbox fashion, the season pass usually contained 4 pieces of story content. Instead, fans were treated to 2 character packs, 1 arena, and 1 story DLC for the pre-sequel, which hurt fans, especially when usually the arena and the character in terms of the Necromancer for Borderlands 2 were given as pre-order bonuses. The game was judged harshly because of this, and it was not until recently, following a community-made mod and fans trying out the game again, that they will start to forgive some of these shortcomings. Obviously, these weren't all the problems through the game. It was also plagued by non-farmable bosses, poorly received non-playable characters, and no endgame. After one playthrough of the story, there wasn't much left to do, and many fans didn't think that Gearbox even knew what made Borderlands popular and what the community wanted in a game. Then came the rise of the looter shooter. Many Borderlands fans left to Destiny, which was released a month earlier than the pre-sequel, but still had a strong and growing player base and offered the closest experience to Borderlands. The Division release followed, and Borderlands news, patches, and communication was lost with Gearbox. But fans stayed persistent and waited patiently for Borderlands 3, knowing it would still offer a unique experience that players wanted and would pay for. Then, years later, and still no official announcement. Borderlands 3 has been alluded to many times with the Unreal Engine 4 rendering effects, but still nothing substantial has been announced. The divide between Gearbox and the players because of this just keeps growing further and further apart. But then, finally news from Gearbox. Unfortunately, it was Battleborn. It was Gearbox's attempt to fill the void of the upcoming hero shooter genre. Unfortunately, Battleborn wasn't marketed correctly and lost to Overwatch. Gearbox tried to win over Borderlands fans to the game with a story mode, but the game did not have enough customization, story missions, or anything Borderlands fans really wanted. It's just now at the end of 2017 adding Borderlands skins to the game, and the player base was lost almost immediately. Me personally, I was a fan of the game, and there still are amazing creators out there still working on the game and making content, but it wasn't enough. The everyday player didn't understand the game, and it was unfortunately lost. Now in September 2017, they announced they would stop supporting content development for the game, which hurts, but many of the talented individuals still are going on to continue work at Gearbox and to what we think is working on the next Borderlands project. Now we have to talk about PAX. Year after year, Gearbox teases big news coming at PAX conventions, but it never leads to anything substantial. Instead, they are continuing to pull at their audience with seeing how much they will take. And I would say not much, but we don't want to see any more magic tricks from Randy Pitchford. We want to see news. Great guy and Twitch streamer Gathalion even asked Randy Pitchford how many retweets on Twitter it would take to see Borderlands 2 on the Nintendo Switch. And Randy responded with the 1 million. Which just kind of led to even more fighting and divide among the community itself, and a discussion of what Gearbox is even working on at this point, especially after the announcement of the closed beta of their most recent project, Project 1v1, which is another hybrid genre mashup to the surprise of no one. The game is a first-person shooter mixed with a card game, and fans were not happy. Randy Pitchford defended the actions of the developers, saying that this game is actually helping the development of Borderlands, which is the same excuse they had for Battleborn, but at least with Battleborn, comparisons are easier to make between Battleborn and the Borderlands series, between characters, skills, customization, loot, so that we kind of understand. So what can Gearbox do to recover? They need to stop being afraid of the fact that they will be a one-game developer. Borderlands is amazing and they struck gold with it. The chance of striking gold twice or having lightning strike twice is nearly impossible. It won't happen again, and Gearbox keeps trying to force this to happen with their mashup genre between Battleborn, which was a first-person shooter, MOBA hybrid, And now with Project 1v1, which is a first-person shooter card game hybrid, a ton of the world's top developers work on one game series and are very well off because of it. It's just sad that Gearbox will never be content with the Borderlands series alone, and they feel like they have to keep proving themselves as a major developer because this game isn't enough. Next, they need to announce Borderlands 3. Even if it's something as simple as a 5-second video showing off the planet and the logo, that would go a long way with the community. And it wouldn't fix everything, but it would kind of rally the community together, which we haven't been together and focus on something a really long time. The Unreal Engine trailer kind of helped, but not to the extent that a new game would. And Gearbox needs to work on their communication. They don't work with creators or the general community enough and engage in the necessary discussion. The community loved the loot hunt, but it only happened once, which allowed the community to farm certain bosses for guns that they would never be able to get before, and kind of helped drop rates in general, which left a lot of work on what to do to keep the game fresh to fall on the creators. One Life Challenge was created because of this, because hardcore was never added into the game. So content creators would stream and see how far they could get through the Borderlands story and levels in one life. Along with the hunt, which is a scavenger hunt where community members and streamers would try to find certain loot and get points for that, and then winners would be announced. And even going so far as to create balance patches for the game, such as the community patch for Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. So there's a lot that Gearbox can do, but it's nothing unmanageable. So I'll close with the final lines from the original article. I really do love you, Gearbox. Make no mistake about it when I say I would not be where I am without Borderlands 2, a game that introduced me to amazing friends, a passionate community, and granted me the ability to live my dream of being a professional gamer. What I write today is not out of spite or hatred, but concern and hope. There's a nigh limitless potential behind your doors, and the time is right to let your light shine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys in the next one.